Lila lived in a small town where life moved at a steady, quiet pace. The streets were lined with old brick houses, some with peeling paint and cracked windows, but there was warmth in the people who lived there. Lila's home was modest, with a small garden that her mother tended to every morning. She loved to watch the flowers bloom and sometimes imagined herself in a big city, full of tall buildings and bright lights. A world very different from her own, but she didn't feel sad about where she lived. She was used to her simple life and found happiness in small things like the smell of fresh bread in the morning, or the laughter of her younger brother. Her family wasn't wealthy. Her mother worked long hours at a local bakery, waking up before sunrise to make bread and pastries. Her father worked in a small repair shop, fixing broken appliances for neighbors who couldn't afford new ones. Lila often helped around the house, tidying up and making sure her brother had done his homework. Even though money was tight, her parents always made sure she had what she needed and taught her the importance of kindness, honesty, and hard work. School was a mix of fun and struggle for Lila. She loved to learn, especially reading and writing. But her school didn't have many resources. The library was small and outdated, with books that were torn or missing pages. Science and art supplies were limited, and the playground was worn down with rusty swings and cracked concrete. Despite this, Lila never complained. She tried to make the best of everything and even helped younger students when they needed guidance. She had a kind heart and often noticed things others didn't. She would see a friend sitting alone during recess and quietly sit with them. She would notice when someone was struggling with a problem and offer to help, even if it was small. One rainy afternoon, her teacher announced a special assignment. Each student was to write a letter to someone they admired or someone they thought could make a difference. Lila listened carefully, thinking about what she could write. Many students chose celebrities or famous athletes, but Lila wanted to reach someone who could truly help people, not just someone she liked on TV. She thought about her school, her friends, and the community around her. She thought about the broken library, the damaged playground, and families who couldn't afford extra books or school supplies. Her heart ached for them, and she knew she had to do something, even if it was just through words on paper. That evening, Lila sat at her small wooden desk by the window. The rain tapped softly against the glass as she stared at the blank sheet of paper. She took a deep breath and began to write, letting her thoughts flow freely. She didn't write about herself or what she wanted. Instead, she wrote about her school and her neighbors, the challenges they faced and the dreams they held. She wrote about the students who wanted to learn but didn't have enough books, about the playground that had seen better days, and about children who hoped for a better future. She wrote with honesty and care, using simple words but expressing a depth of feeling that surprised even her. Lila addressed the letter to the CEO of a large company she had heard about in the news. He was known for helping people in need and for contributing to schools and communities. Lila had never met him, and she didn't know if he would ever read her letter, but she felt it was important to try. She wanted to give a voice to those who couldn't speak for themselves. She hoped that her words might reach someone who could make a difference. As she wrote, she described the small moments that mattered to her. She wrote about the teacher who worked tirelessly to teach despite having few supplies, about the classmates who struggled quietly, and about the joy of learning even in difficult circumstances. She shared her own hopes for the future, that all children could have books to read, a safe place to play, and the chance to follow their dreams. Her words were full of sincerity and compassion, and she poured her heart into every line. After finishing the letter, Lila carefully folded it and placed it in an envelope. She addressed it neatly and wrote the CEO's name, hoping that someone in the company would make sure it reached him. She gave the envelope to her teacher the next day, who promised to send it. Lila felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She didn't know if the letter would ever reach the CEO, but she felt proud of herself for speaking up. It was a small act, but to her it mattered greatly. Days turned into weeks, and Lila continued her routine of school, chores, and helping her brother. She almost forgot about the letter. Though the hope in her heart remained, she focused on her studies, helping her friends, and finding joy in everyday life. She didn't expect anything to come from her letter, and yet she couldn't help but imagine what it would be like if someone truly listened to her words. She dreamed of a day when her school could be repaired, when children would have the books they needed, and when families wouldn't struggle so much. Even though life was simple, Lila noticed the little struggles of her community every day. She saw the single mothers carrying heavy bags of groceries, the elderly neighbor who needed help with the garden, and the children who had to walk long distances to school. She couldn't solve all these problems, but she believed that if she could reach someone who could help, even a small change could make a big difference. Her compassion and thoughtfulness set her apart from many children her age, and people often commented on her maturity and insight. One afternoon, as she helped her younger brother with his homework, she thought about the letter again. She imagined the CEO reading her words, sitting at a big desk surrounded by important papers and taking the time to understand her message. She pictured the changes he could make if he cared about her community. The thought made her heart race with hope and excitement. Even if nothing happened, she knew she had tried, and that in itself felt meaningful. The days passed quietly, and Lila continued to live her life with kindness and curiosity. She found joy in small acts, like helping a friend understand a difficult math problem, or sharing her lunch with someone who forgot theirs. She noticed how even small gestures could brighten someone's day. Her parents encouraged her to keep being thoughtful and compassionate, reminding her that true change often starts with caring for others, even in small ways. Lila never imagined that her simple letter, written with honesty and hope, would begin a chain of events that could change her life and the lives of many others. At that moment, she was just a little girl with a dream, a heart full of compassion and a determination to make a difference in the world around her. She believed that even small voices could be heard if spoken with sincerity and courage. And so, with patience and hope, she continued her daily life, not knowing that her words were about to reach far beyond the walls of her small town and touch someone in a place of great influence, someone who could turn her heartfelt wishes into reality. Weeks passed after Lila had sent her letter, and life in the small town continued as usual. She went to school, helped her younger brother with homework, and assisted her parents whenever she could. Yet despite the routine, she often thought about the letter she had sent. She imagined the CEO sitting in a large office reading her words and wondering if her message had made any difference. Some days she felt hopeful, and other days she feared that perhaps her letter had been lost or ignored. Still, she held on to the belief that even small acts mattered and that the right person might hear her voice. One morning during class, the teacher called her aside and handed her an envelope. Lila's heart skipped a beat. The envelope was thick, official-looking, and had a golden seal on it. She looked up at her teacher, who smiled warmly, and Lila carefully opened the letter. Inside was a response from the CEO himself. He had read her letter and was moved by the honesty, thoughtfulness, and courage she had shown. He acknowledged the challenges her school and community were facing and expressed admiration for her empathy and determination to help others. The letter was filled with encouragement, urging Lila to continue speaking up for her community and reassuring her that her voice mattered. Lila could hardly believe her eyes. Her small letter, written with her own hands and her simple words, had reached someone so important. She felt a mixture of excitement, disbelief, and pride. For the first time, she realized that what she said could have an impact beyond her own small world. She showed the letter to her parents, who hugged her tightly and shared in her joy. They told her how proud they were of her and how her courage and kindness had inspired not just them, but potentially many others. That evening, Lila could hardly sleep. She sat by her window and stared at the stars, thinking about the possibilities her letter had opened. She imagined her school with new books and colorful supplies, children laughing on a repaired playground, and families receiving help to make their lives a little easier. She felt a sense of hope and responsibility at the same time. She knew that words alone might not be enough, but she also knew that her voice had started something bigger, a chain of events that could bring change to the people she cared about. The next day at school, her friends noticed a new light in her eyes. They asked her why she seemed so happy, and she shyly told them about the response she had received. Some of her friends didn't fully understand how significant it was, but they could see that something wonderful had happened. Lila felt a quiet pride in knowing that she had done something meaningful, something that showed that even a young girl could make a difference when she spoke from the heart. Meanwhile, the CEO didn't just stop at writing a letter. He had shared Lila's message with his team and asked them to investigate the situation at her school. They looked into the conditions she had described, visited the small town, and spoke to teachers, parents, and students. They saw the worn-out library shelves, the broken playground equipment, and the classrooms that needed better supplies. They saw the hardworking teachers doing their best despite limited resources, and the children who were eager to learn but lacked what they needed. Lila's words had painted a picture so clear that it moved adults who had long been busy with their own work to action. Back in the town, life continued, but now there was a sense of anticipation. Lila's friends and teachers whispered excitedly about the possibility of change, and parents talked in hushed tones about the attention their small community had suddenly received. Lila felt both excited and nervous. She wondered how big a difference could truly come from a single letter. Yet she also remembered how sincere and heartfelt her words had been. She knew that hope and action often started with someone caring enough to speak out. Days turned into weeks, and the CEO's team began organizing a plan. They contacted local suppliers for books, educational materials, and playground equipment. They coordinated with builders, volunteers, and educators who could help transform the school. Lila didn't know the details at first, but she noticed small changes happening. New people arrived at the school asking questions and measuring areas, and teachers seemed both curious and excited. Lila often watched from a distance, helping where she could, and feeling a sense of pride in the small part she had played. She realized that her words, though simple and innocent, had started a ripple effect that reached far beyond what she could see. She also noticed that the community around her began to feel more hopeful. Parents were talking about the positive changes coming. Children were excited to return to school, and even neighbors she hadn't spoken to much began to ask questions about the improvements. One afternoon, Lila's teacher gathered the class and told them that someone very important would be visiting their school soon. The students buzzed with curiosity and excitement. They didn't know who it would be or what the visit would mean, but they could sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. Lila felt her heart race with anticipation, imagining the person who would come to see the changes she had helped inspire. She tried to focus on her lessons, but it was difficult. Her mind kept drifting to thoughts of what the visit could bring for her school, her friends, and the community she loved. That evening, Lila sat down to write again. Not a letter this time, but a small journal entry about her experiences and what she had seen over the past weeks. She wrote about the new people coming to the school, the conversations she had overheard about improvements, and the hope she felt for the future. She wanted to remember this moment, the way her words had set in motion something bigger than herself. She felt proud of herself, not in a boastful way, but in a quiet, deep sense of accomplishment. As the days passed, Lila's anticipation grew. She imagined meeting the CEO, a person she had only known through news articles and letters. She wondered what he would be like, whether he would smile kindly, and whether he would understand just how much her small words had meant to her community. She also thought about the children in her school, hoping that the improvements would truly make a difference in their lives. She dreamed of seeing them smile while playing on a safe playground or reading from new books, and she felt a warm sense of responsibility to continue speaking up and helping where she could. Finally, the day arrived. A convoy of cars drove into the schoolyard, and a team of adults stepped out carrying plans, papers, and equipment. Lila's heart beat fast as she saw them. Among them was the CEO, who stepped forward with a gentle smile. He walked through the school grounds, listening to teachers and students, observing the conditions and asking thoughtful questions. Lila watched from a distance, feeling both nervous and excited. She wondered what he would think, whether he would understand the depth of her hopes and whether her letter had truly made a difference. As the CEO walked closer, Lila felt a mixture of awe and humility. She realized that her small voice had reached someone who could enact real change, someone who could take action to improve the lives of children, teachers, and families in her community. She also understood that this was only the beginning, that her journey to help others would continue, and that speaking up, even as a young girl, could create opportunities that she had never imagined. That day marked a turning point for Lila. She understood that words, when spoken with honesty and care, could reach far beyond their origin. She also learned that courage, empathy, and a willingness to act on behalf of others could inspire those with the power to help. Lila felt a quiet determination in her heart, knowing that she would continue to look for ways to make a difference, no matter how small her actions might seem. By the end of the day, Lila was exhausted but happy. She had seen hope take root in her school, witnessed the beginnings of change, and understood that her letter, written with innocence and honesty, had truly touched someone's heart. She went to bed that night with a sense of wonder and possibility, dreaming not just of her own future, but of the future she could help shape for those around her. And deep inside she knew that her story was only beginning, that there were more letters to write, more voices to hear, and more acts of kindness to inspire. The days following the CEO's visit were filled with a quiet excitement in Lila's town. Word had spread about the changes coming to the school, and everyone was curious to see what would happen next. Lila woke up each morning with a sense of anticipation, eager to see the progress that had begun because of a simple letter she had written. She noticed small shifts in the community, from teachers talking about new supplies arriving, to parents discussing upcoming improvements to the playground and classrooms. At school, Lila could see the difference in the energy around her. Her friends seemed more cheerful, teachers smiled more often, and the children who usually struggled with motivation were suddenly more engaged. The library had been cleaned and reorganized, and a few new books had already arrived. Though the changes were small at first, they carried a promise of more to come. Lila felt a sense of pride in knowing that her letter had started all of this. She also felt a sense of responsibility to continue helping in any way she could. One afternoon, a team of people from the CEO's company returned to the school. They brought charts, plans, and ideas for transforming the classrooms and playground. Lila watched as they measured areas, discussed possibilities with teachers, and listened carefully to the students' opinions. She was fascinated by how much care and thought they were putting into the work. It made her realize that when people took the time to listen and act, real change could happen. Curiosity got the better of her, and she approached one of the team members, a kind woman who introduced herself as Anna. Lila asked questions about the plans, wanting to understand every detail. Anna smiled warmly and explained that they were going to improve the library, repair the playground, and provide more resources for learning. She also said they wanted to involve students in the process, letting them have a voice in the changes. Lila was thrilled to hear this. She realized that her letter had not only reached someone important, but had also inspired action that included the voices of the children it was meant to help. As the weeks went on, the team worked tirelessly. Volunteers arrived from nearby towns, bringing books, art supplies, and games for the children. The playground was slowly being repaired, with new swings and slides replacing the rusty old equipment. Teachers were given new tools and materials to make lessons more engaging. Lila often helped the volunteers, organizing books, cleaning classrooms, and showing them where things were needed most. She felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. Her simple desire to help others had turned into real, tangible action. Meanwhile, the CEO continued to follow the progress closely. He visited the school again, walking through the classrooms and playground, talking to students and teachers and listening carefully to their needs. When he finally met Lila in person, she felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. She wondered if he remembered her letter, if he would understand how much it had meant to her, and if he realized how much change it had inspired. To her relief, he greeted her warmly and asked thoughtful questions about her school, her friends, and her hopes for the future. During their conversation, Lila spoke honestly about what she had wished for when she wrote the letter. She described the classrooms she had dreamed of, the books she had hoped for, and the playground where children could safely play. The CEO listened carefully, nodding and smiling, showing genuine interest in her words. He praised her courage for speaking up and her kindness in thinking of others before herself. Lila felt proud and understood that her voice had been heard in a way she never imagined. As the renovations progressed, Lila began to notice changes in herself as well. She felt more confident and capable. She realized that her opinions and actions mattered, and that she could influence the world around her. She also noticed that her friends were inspired by her courage, and began to think about how they too could make a difference in their community. Lila understood that change often starts with one person taking a step, but it can grow and spread when others are encouraged to join in. The community around Lila also began to respond. Parents volunteered their time to help with the renovations, neighbors donated materials, and local businesses contributed supplies. People who had previously felt helpless started to see that positive change was possible when they worked together. Lila felt a deep sense of connection to her community, realizing that everyone had a role to play in creating a better future. She had written a letter with hope and sincerity, and now that hope was becoming a shared reality. One day, while organizing new books in the library, Lila overheard two students talking about the changes. They were amazed at how much was being done and how their voices were being heard. They expressed gratitude for the opportunity to be involved, and Lila felt a warm glow of satisfaction. She realized that her actions had ripple effects, inspiring others to see that they too could contribute to positive change. The playground was completed shortly after, with children laughing and running freely on the new swings, slides, and climbing structures. Lila's friends couldn't stop talking about how wonderful it felt to have a safe place to play. Teachers noticed that students were more focused and happy, and the overall atmosphere of the school improved. Lila felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her small act of writing a letter had sparked all of this. She understood that change didn't happen instantly, but with persistence, care, and collaboration, it could grow into something meaningful. As the weeks passed, the CEO sent another letter to Lila, congratulating her on the progress and acknowledging her role in making it happen. He praised her for her kindness, determination, and vision. Lila's heart swelled with pride. She realized that even as a young girl, her words and actions could reach powerful people and inspire real change. She felt grateful for the experience and motivated to continue finding ways to help others in her community. Lila's story began to spread beyond her town. Local news outlets heard about the renovations and the role of the young girl whose letter had inspired the CEO. People were moved by her thoughtfulness, courage, and determination to make a difference. Lila became a symbol of hope and possibility, showing that even small voices could reach far and inspire meaningful action. Her experience taught her and others that one person's compassion and courage could spark change, and that no act of kindness was too small to matter. In the midst of all the attention, Lila remained humble. She continued her daily life with her family, helping her younger brother, assisting her parents, and supporting her friends. She understood that the true reward was not recognition, but the knowledge that she had made a difference in the lives of others. Her story was a reminder that courage, empathy, and action could create a better world, even when it started with something as simple as a heartfelt letter. By the end of this chapter in her life, Lila had learned lessons she would carry forever. She learned that speaking up, even as a child, could have an impact. She learned that hope and perseverance could inspire others to act. She realized that communities could come together to create positive change when someone took the first step. Most importantly, she learned that a kind heart and a brave voice could touch lives in ways she had never imagined. And with this understanding, Lila looked forward to continuing her journey, knowing that more stories, more acts of kindness, and more change awaited her in the future. The school was buzzing with excitement. The new bookshelves stood tall and neat, filled with colorful books that smelled fresh and promising. The playground had been transformed. Swings swayed gently in the breeze, slides glistened in the sun, and the climbing frame was sturdy and inviting. Lila could hardly believe her eyes. It was more than she had imagined, and yet somehow it felt right. Like a dream she had quietly carried for so long had finally come true. The CEO returned to the school for another visit, and this time, it felt personal. Lila had the chance to walk him through the classrooms and library, showing him the areas that had been fixed and improved. She could see the genuine interest in his eyes, the way he listened carefully to the students' stories, and how he smiled at small details, like the excitement on a child's face while holding a new book. Lila realized that this man, who seemed so far away and important when she wrote her letter, had taken her words to heart. She felt a mixture of awe and comfort, knowing that someone in a position of power could still care so deeply about ordinary people. During the visit, Lila was encouraged to speak to a small group of students and teachers about her letter and the journey it had inspired. She stood nervously at first, her hands trembling slightly, but as she began to speak, she felt the confidence that comes from speaking the truth. She talked about why she had written the letter, the dreams she held for her friends and school, and how she believed small voices could make a difference. The students listened intently, some nodding in agreement while teachers smiled warmly, proud of how articulate and brave she was. The CEO nodded along, showing appreciation for her courage and thoughtfulness. After the talk, the CEO asked Lila if she had any ideas about what more could be done for the school and the community. Lila paused, thinking carefully. She spoke about the children who lived far away and struggled to get to school, the families who needed help with basic necessities, and the students who had dreams but lacked guidance. She suggested community programs, reading clubs, and small scholarships for students who showed dedication but had limited resources. The CEO listened carefully and took notes, showing that her ideas were valuable and actionable. Inspired by Lila's suggestions, the CEO promised to expand the initiative beyond just her school. He spoke about working with other schools in similar situations, bringing in resources, volunteers, and programs that could make a meaningful difference in many communities. Lila was stunned. She had written one simple letter from her small town, and now the impact was growing far beyond what she had imagined. She realized that her small voice could echo further than she ever dreamed. As the renovations continued, the students were given opportunities to participate in projects themselves. They painted walls, organized books, planted flowers in the garden, and even helped plan playground layouts. Lila took a lead in some of these activities, guiding her friends and classmates with care and encouragement. She noticed that when children were included in decision-making, they felt a sense of ownership and pride. Lila felt fulfilled seeing her friends smile with excitement as they contributed, knowing that their efforts would be part of a lasting change. Outside of school, Lila's family and neighbors noticed the changes too. Parents began volunteering, contributing materials, and helping with tasks around the school. Neighbors spoke about how inspiring it was to see children, teachers, and community members working together for a common goal. Lila's parents often spoke quietly to her, expressing their pride and admiration for her courage and dedication. Lila felt a deep sense of gratitude, understanding that her efforts were part of a larger tapestry of community, compassion, and shared responsibility. The CEO, seeing the success and impact of the initial efforts, organized a small event to celebrate the students and the community. It was a day of joy and recognition with laughter, games, and speeches. Lila was invited to speak again, this time to a larger audience that included local officials, teachers, parents, and children from nearby schools. She shared her journey, starting with the letter she had written, and spoke about the importance of empathy, action, and believing that even small voices matter. The crowd listened in admiration. Many moved to tears, inspired by her sincerity and courage. In the weeks that followed, the CEO maintained contact with Lila and the school. He encouraged ongoing projects, introduced new programs for learning and development, and provided support for community initiatives. Lila felt proud to be a part of this process, realizing that her actions had created opportunities for others and inspired hope. She understood that leadership was not just about authority, but about listening, understanding, and taking meaningful action based on what people truly needed. The students continued to benefit from the new resources. They read books that opened their minds to new worlds, played safely on the improved playground, and engaged in creative activities that nurtured their talents. Teachers felt supported and motivated, knowing they had the tools to teach effectively and make learning enjoyable. Lila's school had transformed, not just physically but in spirit. There was a renewed sense of hope, collaboration, and ambition that permeated every classroom, hallway, and outdoor space. Lila herself began to see a change in how she viewed the world. She realized that action, courage, and empathy could create meaningful impact. She became more confident in speaking up, more aware of the challenges around her, and more committed to helping others in any way she could. She also noticed that when she acted with honesty and compassion, it encouraged others to do the same. The ripple effect she had started was growing, reaching more people than she could have imagined when she first wrote her letter. As time went on, Lila continued to write, not just for herself, but for others. She shared stories, suggested solutions, and encouraged her friends and community to participate in small acts of kindness and service. The CEO remained a supportive figure, checking in periodically, celebrating achievements, and offering guidance when needed. Lila felt inspired and valued, understanding that her efforts, no matter how small, could reach influential people and bring about real change. The town began to feel more connected, with families, teachers, and students working together toward common goals. Lila's story spread beyond the town, inspiring other communities to take similar steps. She was recognized not for fame or attention, but for her compassion, courage, and determination to make the world a better place. Lila understood that true success was measured not by recognition, but by the positive difference one could make in the lives of others. By the end of this period, Lila had grown in ways she never anticipated. She had learned that speaking honestly, acting courageously, and caring deeply could inspire people far beyond her own experience. She had seen her small voice grow into a movement that touched many lives, and she understood the importance of empathy, collaboration, and hope. Lila's journey had begun with a simple letter, yet it had transformed her, her school, and her community in ways she could have never imagined. And with this understanding, she looked forward to continuing her journey, knowing that her voice and actions could always make a difference, no matter where life took her next. As the days passed, the changes at Lila's school became a permanent part of everyday life. The library, once dusty and neglected, now stood as a place of discovery and imagination. Students would often spend their free time reading books about faraway lands, adventures, and stories of courage. Lila loved watching her classmates' eyes light up as they explored these worlds. The playground, too, was filled with laughter and energy, a safe space where children could play freely and make memories. Each swing, slide, and climbing frame seemed to carry the hope and determination that had begun with a simple letter. Lila continued to participate actively in the school's transformation. She organized reading circles, helped maintain the library, and even suggested ideas for after-school programs. She noticed that when children were involved in creating positive changes, they felt proud and responsible. She encouraged her friends to take part, guiding them patiently and making sure everyone felt included. Lila realized that leadership was not about being in charge, but about helping others shine and giving them the opportunity to contribute. Her relationship with the CEO deepened over time. Though most of their interactions were through letters and occasional visits, he encouraged Lila to continue thinking about ways to help others and praised her for showing that even small voices could make a difference. He shared stories of other communities and schools, discussing how small actions could grow into larger movements. Lila listened carefully and was inspired to think bigger, imagining ways to extend help to nearby schools and neighborhoods. One day, the CEO invited Lila and a few other students to a small meeting at the company's headquarters. Lila traveled with her parents, feeling nervous and excited. The building was enormous, with shiny floors, glass walls, and bustling offices. Lila had never seen anything like it before. She felt a little overwhelmed, but reminded herself that her letter had brought her here. She walked with her head held high, determined to represent her school and community. At the meeting, Lila met people who worked in different departments, each passionate about helping communities in need. She shared her experiences at school, the progress they had made, and the programs she hoped to see in the future. Her words were sincere and thoughtful, and the adults listened attentively, asking questions and considering her suggestions. Lila realized that her perspective as a student was valuable, and that her ideas could influence real decisions. It was a lesson in the power of speaking up and being heard. Back in her town, Lila continued to see the ripple effects of her actions. Local newspapers wrote articles about her initiative, highlighting how a young girl's letter had inspired a major company to act. People in the community felt proud, and other children were encouraged to think about how they could contribute to positive change. Lila's story became a symbol of hope, demonstrating that compassion, courage, and honesty could create meaningful impact. Lila also began mentoring younger students, teaching them the importance of empathy, leadership, and community service. She shared stories of her own experiences, explaining how small acts could grow into larger movements. The children listened eagerly, inspired by her courage and determination. Lila felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing that she could influence and motivate others, just as she had been inspired herself. Meanwhile, the CEO continued to support her school and nearby communities. He organized workshops, scholarship programs, and educational initiatives that allowed more children to access resources and opportunities. Lila participated in some of these programs, helping other students and learning new skills herself. She realized that learning and giving could go hand in hand, and that growth came not only from receiving help but also from helping others. As the months went by, Lila's school thrived. Teachers felt empowered, students felt motivated, and the community felt united. The library became a hub of activity, the playground a symbol of joy, and the classrooms places of inspiration. Lila's small act of writing a letter had transformed not only her school but the spirit of the entire community. She had shown that age, size, or circumstances didn't limit the impact one could have if they acted with sincerity and courage. Through this journey, Lila also learned valuable life lessons. She understood the importance of persistence, knowing that change takes time and effort. She recognized the value of empathy, seeing how listening and caring for others could inspire action. She appreciated collaboration, realizing that working together created stronger and more lasting results. Most importantly, she saw the power of hope, learning that even in difficult situations, a single act of kindness and courage could spark positive transformation. Lila's parents were proud beyond words. They often spoke quietly to her, expressing their admiration for her courage and thoughtfulness. They reminded her that while the recognition was wonderful, the true value lay in the lives she had touched and the inspiration she had provided. Lila absorbed these lessons, carrying them with her as she continued to dream, write, and act for the betterment of her community. One afternoon, as Lila sat under the shade of a tree in the newly renovated playground, she reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple letter. She remembered the nights she had spent writing, wondering if anyone would read her words and the hope she had felt that someone might listen. She smiled as she watched her friends laugh and play, realizing that her small act had grown into something much bigger than she had ever imagined. The CEO visited once more, not for an inspection, but to celebrate the ongoing success and achievements of the students and community. Lila spoke to him again, sharing updates and ideas for future projects. He listened attentively, praised her for her continued dedication, and encouraged her to keep using her voice to make a difference. Lila felt grateful, inspired, and ready to take on more challenges, knowing that her efforts could create lasting impact. By the end of this chapter, Lila had grown in ways she never expected. She had learned that one person's voice, when spoken with sincerity and compassion, could reach influential people and inspire meaningful change. She had experienced the power of community, collaboration, and perseverance. She had seen firsthand how courage, empathy, and action could transform lives, and she understood that her journey was only beginning. Lila continued to write, speak, and act with purpose. She encouraged her peers, helped her community, and nurtured the seeds of change that had been planted with her letter. The school remained a beacon of hope and progress, and the community continued to grow stronger and more connected. Lila's story became a reminder that even the smallest actions, when guided by kindness and courage, could touch hearts, inspire others, and create a future filled with possibility and hope. And with this understanding, Lila looked forward to the future, knowing that her voice and actions could always make a difference, no matter where life took her next.